starting from motion right here, the parts of on the frame we're putting on here. This thing is motion equipped and going to be a motion performer.
I like it.
This auto right here.
I like it. Well, guys, we are back with Pumpkin Spice, day 2 of the updates. Unfortunately for El Toro, that means we're stealing the transmission converter out of it, and we are going to put it in this unit. So we're going to take this thing a few steps back, simply because we ran out of time. We didn't have enough time to buy a proper transmission and have Greg Slack build us a converter. So did the best thing we know how to do, and that's scavenge parts off El Toro. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this sucker. So I got this sucker on the lift, kick Parker's car off, and I'm just getting it all prepared to drop the transmission out. I just remembered this morning that this has a Ford bell housing on it, of course. So I got a new bell housing on order from FTI, and that means tomorrow we'll be able to actually put it in there. Because what I want to do is make sure I get a drive shaft on order. I know that this placement of this transmission is not the same as this, so eventually we'll get it all squared back away, but for now we're going to start taking El Toro apart. All right, guys, so we have the old brakes stripped off, and I'm going to show you a weight comparison just so you understand. You know, one of the interesting things about brakes on a drag racing style application is people tend to over brake the front of the car, meaning they'll put a big old brake rotor, they'll put a big caliper on the front of their vehicle, and then they'll take a proportioning valve and take all of the bias and put it to the rear, because a front drag racing tire being a 3, 4, 6 inch patch is not big enough to apply braking appropriately. It just kind of works against physics in the sense that you have a small contact patch. So if you're putting a bunch of braking on it, it's just going to lock that front tire up. So our theory on drag racing brakes is to put as much of the braking as possible on the rear of the car. So what we're ended up doing is what we see a lot is people put those 4 pistons, they pull the bias out. So why carry all that weight? So we have come up with a formula, and we've been using it for the last decade at TBM. I say we, but TBM hasn't, and of course subsequently we have since we purchased TBM. And that's to put a 2-piston front brake on the front of these cars. Typically a car under 3,400 pounds, we'll just put that 2-piston. And then speed is of course a big component of what you're doing. But this thing is about 3,000 pounds or slightly under. It definitely will be under when we do the brakes. And it goes, even in a quarter mile, it goes 160. Remember, my Nova weighed about 3,400 pounds and some change, and went over 190 mile an hour consistently on those 2-piston fronts. So basically what we're doing is we're using the 2 pistons correctly, not taking bias away. We're applying braking on our rear 4-piston calipers, which our rear 4-piston calipers are the strongest on the market. They deliver the most stopping power because they're stronger, they have the correct pistons in them, and pad-wise, we use a pad that's aggressive enough to get the job done. So by using a stronger rear caliper setup and then that 2-piston front, we're able to match or exceed the braking power of a lot of systems out there, especially when you consider how much bias they're taking away, which that can be problematic in and of itself, because if you don't adjust it properly, it just kind of becomes a big game of back and forth. So I wanted to show you the weight of what we're pulling off. Like I said, we're not using a 4-piston, so why would we have a 4-piston on the front? So it's going to save a lot. And that's also comes into play as far as the strut controlling, extension and compression, stuff like that. And then unsprung weight, and then of course rolling mass. So our current brake setup on the front that we just pulled off was about 15.6 pounds, almost 16 pounds. All right, so you guys saw that the other brakes that we had on there were almost 16 pounds, I think 15.7 to be exact. This shows you the beauty of not only our lightweight rotor design and lightweight hub design, but also the power of, if you have good 4-piston brakes in the back and you can run these 2 pistons instead of taking all the bias out,
yep,
you save, I mean, we're talking about 7 pounds, so pretty big.
Yep, add that together for the front and rear, and it's a pretty good chunk of weight right there.
Yeah, so you're about 28 pounds, a lot of it rotating mass, a lot of it unsprung. So yeah, you know, when you're trying to use your front struts to control things, you're trying to control wheelies and stuff like that, any of this stuff matters a lot. So, not to mention, TBMs are pretty sweet.
And you could put a front wheel speed sensor on there.
Oh yeah, so this is a big one, especially if you're doing like no prep, backtrack, whatever. We have this built-in wheel speed sensor, which we'll show you the install of this, but it works in conjunction with our hubs and our brackets. It's a bolt-on solution, and our sensor is really nice, puts off a clean signal. Brett LaSala said it was the best signal he's ever seen on a front wheel speed sensor. It's got 20 pickup points, and you just bolt that right there. You can see how it's the same shape, and then it has a quick connect wiring setup that you can, of course, then put a Deutsch on the other end or something like that. So
Easy.
I just want to reiterate, this isn't a thing against any brands of brakes. It's just how we do it, and of course these upgrades are going to happen for us anyways. So I just wanted to show you kind of the difference in weights. It's going to make a big difference on the performance of this vehicle across the board, and what it isn't going to do is decrease the stopping power. We're going to have a brake that stops equally as well, and also thanks to the strength of our calipers and our pads that return when you let off the brakes, we're not going to sacrifice pad life or rotor life or anything like that. So we'll get back to installing some brakes on this car and go in the right direction in the build. So Prika is prepping the brake kit for me.
Yep. It's getting the studs ready to go.
One of the unique things about our front hub style kits for these box bodies and on a lot of our other kits is the rotor will bolt right here instead of having a hub and then another hat and then the rotor, which takes a lot of weight out of what you're doing. And then you can see kind of like our lightweight design on these things surely decreases a lot of weight. And then caliper wise, we're using our F1 caliper. This has an 1 3/4 piston. Most brakes that look like this out there are actually a slider where they have one piston in the back, and then the front pad actually is a small pad and it slides. So it doesn't actually have two opposing pistons. This caliper is two opposing pistons, so you get equal opposite pressure, equal distribution. Pad size is not affected because it's a slider. And then of course, it doesn't bind up like a slider caliper. We don't like to use those if we don't have to. All right, Sam, so tell us about what you're going to do to this thing, because a lot of people aren't real familiar with the detail inside of things, and of course neither am I.
Was just to, we want to start on the trunk lead because Doug said it had the most abuse somewhere, laying away from things. So we're going to look at it and see what it's going to take. It's got a few scratches, got a couple of bad places along in here. We're going to see if we can color sand those out. So we'll take a little bit. It's got some extra rubber on it. I don't think we'll need to carry that around, so we're going to take that off.
We'll find a way to put more on there.
Have a look, see at the windows. I think it's got some pretty good scratches in here, but they'll be okay. We'll get that taken care of. But it's going to take us a little time, but it just needs a little loving. It's all.
Yeah.
Can't be fixed.
It's worth it.
Of course it is.
Because this is what we call a keeper.
This is a keeper car right here. This is staying with us. Okay, this car stays with us. You know, it's like I was talking to Victor yesterday, and I said, Victor, is that car for sale? And he said, no. And usually Victor has something that's always for sale. And I said, no, you usually say everything's for sale. And he said, not that car. I said, okay, good. Then we won't try to buy it anymore.
That's when you know it's worth something. Yep.
Oh, if Vic says it ain't selling it, the car's worth something big time. So back to our car here. We want to fix this up before it's as shiny here as it is up down the top. Still have a little match when we go down the track. And then people will say, hey, the car looks pretty darn good. Well, that's what we're at.
Yep.
We want to run good, show good, and go down the road good. That's what we're at.
All right, Prika, my buddies over at Superior Auto Care over here in Bradenton, they got us some new lightweight tires mounted up. These are the new Mickey Thompson ET Street fronts. They are they're more of a long bias. They're a bias ply, but they're like a long.
Yeah.
Aren't they? Are they a bias ply or are they
it's
radial?
a radial compound, like kind of like the ET Street R, and then the Radial Pro. So bias ply sidewall, but with like a radial compound still. So it's not as soft as like the normal ET front.
Yeah, we're probably not educated enough, but what we do know is we like them.
Yeah, they're definitely nice, and they're light.
And they last. They last more than one drag and drive.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's a huge plus.
Okay.
Oh, so you weren't kidding about this whole sanding thing?
No, we still want to do a little bit of 2000. We had some rough places in paint. So we're just going to do some 2000 on a couple of the places, then give it a buffing and see where we are, how much more we need to do, and then get on with the program.
You don't waste no time,
No,
Sam.
that's what we got to do.
Well, in true hot rodding fashion, one simple install for a brake kit turned into a several day install. These spindles, come to find out, are a like 79 to 86 spindle. which means that our brakes won't fit on them because our brakes are designed for 87 to 93 spindle. Luckily, I found some in town here, but I can't get them till tomorrow. But what it does kind of like reinforces just the whole nature of what we're doing here. I now realize how important it is that we have a 79 to 86 brake kit. We just never have because everything was originally based off 87 to 93. So it's time to circle back, and we'll take these spindles and eventually turn that into a brake kit that is usable for people with the earlier years, so they don't have to search for spindles and stuff like that. But I don't remember them being that because this is a 93 model, but that's how things go. Meanwhile, Sam is knocking this trunk out, and it's starting to look like $1 million.
Oh, we got a ways to go. We're getting out to where it's race ready. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's looking pretty slick though.
And race ready, you know?
Race ready. Okay.
Look who's going to be driving it. That's
Yeah.
It. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it'll look good anyways.
Good deal.
All right. Intake is off. Since we can't finish the brakes tonight, we figured we would finish something. Again, we're going to put the new billet valley cover on there because it can. Change out some sensors to the Rife 100 PSI sensors, and then also put the motion steam kit on at the same time. Just really update this unit. These kids just can't leave anything alone, huh, Sam?
They start in, I leave, and I've got a perfectly fine running car. Let's go around the block and come back, and the intake's off. The carburetor's gone. Now we have a non-running car, but the technicians are on it. It's going to be running before long.
I don't know if you can consider us technicians, but we are hoping to improve everything. You know what I mean? Whether it's looks, performance, all of it.
Well, it does have a fairly good-looking air conditioner on it, and I feel sure it's going to keep things pretty cool, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Yes.
chilly winds.
I like that. Yes, it'll be chilly up there in that.
Some, but not enough.
Sam, you earned that Coke. So it turns out this car has a custom brake setup. Now I remember, you can see the Dykem red on here that I used when I machined the bracket from the beginning. So I'm gonna have to probably fire up a machine tomorrow and modify some brackets. It's amazing, we're in, you know, brake capital of the world over here, and we don't even have a bracket that fits it, but nobody did, because that's why I had to make this in the beginning. So pretty much everything we've done today has fought us, except for yeah, pretty much everything.
Yeah.
But that's how it goes, you know. You quickly are reminded why we make, you know, race car parts a certain way, trying to make them so people don't have to fight as much. Sam's going to town though.
Oh, we got us a race car in motion here, one for the week. It won't be, it'll not be the Cinderella of it all, but it's going to look pretty nice, you know. When we get done, it'll look pretty nice.
It's really starting to shine up pretty well. So Sam's got bunch of little defects out of the roof that have been there since when I owned it the first time, and I think he's putting a final polish on the roof now. You can see he's gonna wipe that on.
Do a little final one on the trunk, a little final one on the roof, and I'll come back when we're done with the car, and I'll do a final polish on the whole thing. This right now gets 90% of the way, and then we'll do a final polish on the whole car.
You know what's great about this though? We're showing struggles. It's not easy. Been here all night. We got the trunk, the roof done. None of this stuff comes easy.
It'll be ready to go to the ball. It'll
Yeah,
be ready.
it'll be ready for 6 weeks. So we have confidence. All right, so we're putting on the motion throttle cable. One of the things I want to remind you guys of is how easy this throttle cable makes it. If it's not the right length, you can actually pull this end off. It's actually threaded onto the cable, cut it down in the middle, and then just re-thread it onto the new end. And then you can obviously pull the cable out of the inside of it, because the the throttle body side is a fixed side. The pedal side is where you actually adjust it. So it makes it a lot easier to kind of make these adjustments over here, and then you just pull it tight on the floor side, and I'll show you guys that here in a minute. So basically, when you are messing around with these cables, what ends up happening is that end gets frayed. You can start to see this one got frayed. Well, what's nice about how we designed ours is you can see the taper there, and then on the pedal side there's also a taper, so even if it's slightly frayed, it's going to go together. If you've used other brand cables before, you know that that non-fixed throttle body end is always a problem. There's one tiny little set screw. It's hard to clamp down on it, and then if you take it apart, you're never putting it back together again. If you weld the end of the cable, it sometimes makes it a little easy, but it's still very not ideal. So we went back to a factory style, and then that allows you all the adjustment. And then on the factory, we can actually have not one, but 2 set screws, so we can really kind of ensure that nothing ever comes loose. All right, guys, so obviously we're doing a bunch of stuff that we weren't planning on doing with the car. Some of it, just to be fancy. But the good of the whole thing is I've got re-familiar with the car, and knowing our fuel system issue that we were running into with the fuel not increasing pressure like it should, not going up, we assumed, hey, that's a fuel system issue. Like maybe we have a pump that's going out, it's got a lot of miles and years on it. Maybe we got a clogged filter. Still gonna check that. But what I did find is by doing maintenance, I found something very small, and I'm almost 100% sure it's the culprit. So I want to show you guys. Had I not been doing this, I probably wouldn't have noticed, but found that this push to connect that is at least 15 years old, definitely the original push to connect I built this out of, is cracked. So I went to go put it back on and notice this. So obviously, if this is actually the one that runs right to the fuel pressure regulator, so if it's not getting positive pressure there, number one, that is going to be a problem with that thing going, adding boost on top of the base pressure. But number two, it's a huge boost leak. Anytime you even have a small cold side leak like that, it's going to make a huge difference. So just one of those things you find when you're working on stuff. It makes me want to actually go ahead and replace all those lines, because you just never know what else is lurking. We use this, I remember back when I built this car, I had this like splatter resistant for welding push to connect, which is cool. It's got a heat shield on it, but much like anything like that, bad stuff can be hiding underneath, especially when you have like a bend like this or something like that. So I think I'm going to replace both of these lines. One was to the blow off valve and one was to the fuel pressure regulator. To my knowledge, and from what I can see, those are the only 2 original ones left. Just general maintenance. Okay, we are 1 step forward, 2 steps back, working on getting the brake stuff situated. In the meantime, we went ahead and put on the TBM brakes, manual master kit. The reason for this is not because we needed practice or wanted practice. This is a 15/16 bore master cylinder, so essentially when you're putting 2 piston front brakes on and 4 piston rears, in a spot where you typically had 4 piston front and dual 4 piston rear, you're going to need a lot less volume. Having all that volume, we're basically trying to achieve pressure, and in order to achieve pressure, it's a simple calculation of pedal ratio versus bore size, and that'll kind of be based off of what we're demanding out of the calipers. This is not really a super complicated thing, but it's a huge detail, especially if you're switching to a 2 piston, and it's really the most important part in making sure that these work as good as you hope they would work. So if you ever have questions about this stuff, we have a lot of great people at TBM that are great resources for master cylinder size as well as pedal ratio. These 2 things cannot be ignored. A lot of times you will get a manual master kit, and it'll go right in, bolt right in. The push rod will bolt right to the factory place in the pedal. That's almost always completely wrong. There's a lot of factors that matter. Getting the pedal ratio up over a power booster is important. The master cylinder size, all that matters. So we're not the only ones who know how to do it. There's a lot of companies that make a lot of good kits. But if you ever have questions, give us a call. We want to make sure your stuff's working right, and we'd rather see you have brakes than not have brakes. So just know that, whether you put 4 piston front and rear, dual rears, and whatever, it's all going to change the actual bore size and what is demanded. That'll eventually end up in a better pedal feel, better braking, and then better all-around performance of the system. All right, so we got El Toro's transmission. Effectively stole it. Got our drag slack converter, which we're gonna reuse. So right now we are gonna have to switch the bell housing over. So obviously it can go into a Chevy bolt pattern. So that's where we're at, and that's where we're going. All right, so we are on to a shifter install, trying to wrap up everything. I got the new Motion Raceworks throttle cable adjusted with the 2 set screws under there. Working on putting our manual master cylinder kit in here, as we talked about earlier. And then right now I'm working on getting the operator installed. One of the things that I don't probably talk about very much is how modular the base of it is. You can see there's, I'm gonna have to do some vacuuming here, but you can see the feet. There's actually 5 mounting spots for the feet. So the front one actually became an issue because it overlaid like an old bolt hole. So I just moved it back one, and you're back in business. So you're not really limited on mounting options. We filled the tunnel on this car. Otherwise, we do have a Fox body bolt-in style plate for this, but knowing that I did that way back when, it was gonna be tough to make that work. So hopefully get all of this wired tonight, and the interior completely back together. I do need to put some up-to-date seat belts in it, but otherwise hopefully we can just kind of close the door on that. Dad joke. Frank is just doing some nice detail work.
Yep, trying to make the tank off look a little better.
Trying to make it look, you know, pretty factory-ish with the Power Glide aftermarket shifter. As you can see, we got the master cylinder in there. That's the new 15/16 bore. The brake pedal is hooked up and ready. We've got the shifter in, doing some wiring, basically trying to get the neutral safety stuff, the trans brake button down here, the line lock, and then I'm actually wiring in our reverse switch. So this shifter, I don't know if I've talked about it. I'm not sure if I've talked about it recently, but when you are in reverse, it has an indicator built in with 2 wires, so you can actually have that activate your trans brake, so that when you're trying to back up, you don't have to hold this down and then you know, steer a manual steering car. That's a huge bonus, at least for me anyways. I always am like on off, because you're trying to crank the wheel and you're trying to hold a brake button. It's just really cumbersome. So that is a must-have situation, and that's one of the cool things about the operator. It has it built in, no extra cost. All right, so our rear, the dual caliper, as you would probably expect, right?
Pretty light.
No, the dual caliper was heavy.
Yeah, 18 pounds.
18 pounds.
Yeah.
We won't show it because I don't want to make it seem like we're slandering anybody. But going to the single caliper, stronger caliper that is going to deliver the same type of stopping force is 11.2. So we're saving 14 pounds just off the rears.
Yeah, it's huge.
So between the front and the rear, it's pretty substantial. Okay, everything is nice and torqued on this. We're going to hook this Rife sensor up. I just don't know if we're going to have time. One thing that I almost always forget to do is put a push connect line, so that we're going to plumb in one of our transmission overflow catch cans. But this one can be pretty difficult to get in once it's up in the factory tunnel. So just trying to prep things so that when we get after it tomorrow, that's we got what we need to get the job done. So this is really the epicenter of fun right here. You have dual cup holders for anything you would like to keep cold.
Cold snacks.
Cold snacks.
Cold snacks.
Could be water. Got your line lock there, trans brake there, gear shifts, you know, and then we got CO2 on board. Man, this is really where it's at. Feel how smooth that thing is. Goodness gracious.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, it's
one-handed.
It's really going to be nice for driving. And some billet orange anodized grips. This thing's really going to set this interior off.
Oh, yeah. Color accents.
Yep.
It's killer.
Yep.
Can't beat it.
Goes great with the original steering wheel, which we're going to leave in here for a while. So we already got one race car. This one needs to be a little bit more of a tamed down.
It's a luxury mobile, you know.
Luxury sedan.
It's got door panels. It's got carpet. It's got a dash. You know.
Yeah. Luxury
cup holders. Luxury coupe. Yeah. Back seat.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about putting a radio back in this slot. So we'll see how crazy we get. Not before 6 weeks.
Yeah,
there is no way that'll happen.
Yeah. We'll have a Bluetooth speaker.
Like I'm thinking like a 12 in the trunk, and then some 6x9s.
You know who would be in front of that? Mr. Caddy Dangler.
Yeah.
He'd love to hear some booms in here.
I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it. All right, guys, so we got a tremendous amount done since the first few days we had the car. Preka has been working late every night. I've been working late almost every night. Somehow I got him to work on the car when I wasn't here. But we're trying to take our time to really kind of enjoy this. It's so cool to see all of our, ideas come to life and be applied to a car that was, of course, part of the beginning of motion. I'm just really having a lot of fun with it. So even though I've been working a lot of hours, a lot of fun. Hopefully tomorrow we will get the front struts in from Mentor. Again, one of the things we want to do to try to prevent wheelies. We know how to make power with these things. We know how to go down a track, so it's kind of dumb not to have the tools you need to prevent what's coming next, which is wheelies, tuning, all that stuff. So we'll have shocks. We will have some limiter straps coming from Motion. I'll show the install of those. And then the 180 first gear glides are going to help it a lot at this power level. Ideally, I would have had a 169, but anyways. We're going to go home for the night so I can get this video edited and get it out to you guys. Sick week is only about a week and a half away, so we're running down to the wire, but really, we got it under control. So we will see you guys next time. Don't forget to tune in. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to get this thing on the track. And not to mention, done so we can start showing you, just the finish of it all.